again, as we sit down together and have our conversations that we call attempted intelligence. Today, we are going to attempt to have a discussion. Now, the discussion or the topic that we're going to center this discussion around, I wouldn't say that either one of us has a firm answer. Is that fair?
I'd say so, yes.
Okay, so essentially, the topic that I'd like to work around or work towards or work in relation to is how to at least superficially detect if somebody has more confidence than they deserve in their intellectual position.
Okay.
Right, so in intellectual position, what I'm really more so saying is somebody has a firm belief in something being correct and unquestionable. Would you accept that?
Yes.
Okay, so would it be fair to say somebody who's telling you, "I'm right, shut up"? Is that another way to say it?
That sounds like a very short, quick, and dirty way to say it, yeah.
Is that, when I brought the topic up to you, is that how you envisioned it, or were you thinking of something else?
It was slightly softer, but very similar.
Okay, so what did you think initially when I brought that up?
Initially, I thought of experiences that I had, and when I was talking to someone about a specific topic, and I would bring up information, and they would say, "Well, none of that matters." And I'm like, "Well, it does if we're talking about this topic that you're talking about. Like, you have to at least just account for the fact that this is information."
Consider what I'm saying?
Just at all,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Okay, so you were relating to experiences that you've had where people would not even consider things that you were bringing up.
Correct.
They just said everything you bring up is invalid. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't take the extra step and say, "Well, they were treating me like an asshole in this situation." Is that...
Yes.
Okay. And I appreciate that, because then you're not necessarily going to a firm position where anybody who doesn't consider the things that you're saying immediately is an asshole. Because they might not be. And that's reasonable.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, I'm going to hold an appropriate level of uncertainty and say, you might be an asshole, or you might just be really convinced.
Right.
But I don't know why you're so convinced, because these things seem to matter to me.
Right.
Okay, fair. So, if I were to provide you a situation and say, the root of it came down to, I had an experience, I was speaking to somebody, and they were very sure of their position, but I wasn't sure that they should be sure.
Okay.
What would you suggest to me? So it's like, Mark, I was talking to this person and they were just telling me that they were right, and nothing that I said seemed to do anything to them. They wouldn't even consider alternate opinions.
Well, for me, I would suggest that you actually kind of research it on your own. Just to look up that information on your own to see what is valid and what's not valid, because that person they're not connected to you at that moment. Like, the moment that
so they're not engaging in the conversation I'm attempting to have.
Right.
So if I said, well, do you think they're right? What would you say? And I presented, like, with specific details, this person just wouldn't listen. They were sure they were right. Do you think they were right, Mark?
Well, and my honest answer would be, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, now, you and I seem to have enough overlap in personalities and viewpoints that sometimes we may not necessarily detect things that we can't detect, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. Okay?
Right.
There have been situations where there's a person that you and I both know that we've had separate conversations with on the same topic, and they said, that's literally what he said to me.
Right.
Well, yeah, because he's awesome and smart. What? Now, but that said, I think one of the overlaps that we both have is to just say, I'm not so sure about that. I think it didn't make sense to me. I'm going to go learn.
Right.
Is there a specific cue in a conversation that suggests to you that you should go dig into something because you're unsatisfied with how sure somebody was?
It's for me in any conversation, and I find that this is happening more so as I have more conversations with varying people, is the openness to have that conversation, have a dialogue that's back and forth, and to be willing to accept a different point of view. If someone is unwilling to accept my point of view at all, I feel like that's a trigger or a sign for me.
Go figure more out?
Yes.
Okay. And are you going to attempt to remember the position that they hold and say, well, let me look this up?
Yeah.
And see if they're correct. Because if they're correct,
Right.
that's nice.
Yes.
Then you've learned something. If they're not correct, do you turn around and shove that back in their face, or do you just take the information that they weren't correct and go about your day?
I would go about my day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's very obvious that they're just not going to listen because they didn't listen the first time.
Right.
And now that you're armed with the information that proves that they're wrong, maybe not as likely to listen.
Right.
Because you're proving them wrong. And that doesn't feel good.
Fair enough.
At least in the moment when somebody else is doing it to you. Now, all of that vaguely, without specific details and specific situations, would point me towards the cue for me is similar to what you're saying, but I would say as succinctly as possible. If somebody is unwavering in their position, it immediately becomes concerning to me, right? Because I have seen enough of the world, I have learned enough about very specific topics to know that even on those very specific topics, I don't know everything. I am a subject matter expert on some things, but I definitely don't know everything. I know that I don't.
Right.
So if somebody's going to be talking about a subject that I do know, and they're extremely firm, and it doesn't include things that I already know that aren't even agreed upon,
Right.
yeah, you don't deserve that confidence.
Right.
So I think that wasn't as succinct as I thought it would be.
Okay.
To be succinct, anybody who's unwavering in their position, I'm checking you.
Okay.
If you are convinced that you're right and you won't listen to anything, you're unwavering, I'm pretty sure you're wrong.
Right.
Or you may be correct on a level, but there are large levels on which you're missing information. I'm checking you.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not going to check you in your face. I've already tried. I said, are you sure about that? Definitely. You don't know what I know. I would say that's fair circumstantially,
yes.
Because you're very firm. But I'm going to go learn.
Right.
Well, yeah, you go learn, see that I'm right. And then, well, yeah, I'm just going to go learn.
Right.
So that I learn. Right? So the signal for me to check stuff is when people are absolutely certain or behave as if they're absolutely certain externally. And I'm like, I need to check this. Because the reality is if you're absolutely certain about something, you could be subject to two things. Either being awesome or being unable to detect your error. With humans, I am going to be a little bit more convinced that somebody who's extremely firm in their current position is unable to detect their errors. And I wouldn't say that they're unwilling, necessarily. I'd say that they're okay, maybe I should adjust that. They are more likely unable to, for whatever set of reasons, just because of the level of conviction that they have about their current position. They're definitely right, so what do you know, you lousy peasant? Right? So, based on human architecture, or human cognitive architecture, when I talk to you about the idea that there's EEG signaling, so electroencephalogram, I believe is what it is. So the helmets on the head that are reading electrical activity, essentially ideally emanating from the brain and not obscured by facial expression or other cranial muscular contraction. And there's signals that seem to show a stable signature for when, like for correct, for error detected, and then for uncertain.
Right.
They're just different signatures. So there is cognitive architecture that says no error detected. So I think no error detected would probably be a better way to describe it then. I'm definitely correct. This is more passive. It's like no error detected. And I mean, who are you?
Well, I was just curious, as you were talking, you mentioned unwavering, and I'm wondering, because just in my experience, a lot of the times when they're unwavering, they don't, if I question them, like, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
They don't often back up the are you sure with more data and more information to reaffirm their certainty.
Yeah.
So they often just say, well, if you don't know, I have to, like...
Then I obviously know more than you because you don't know about this.
Exactly.
Or, well, if you don't... I don't remember the artist, but if you don't know me by now, you will never know me. I'm not going to sing it, but you know the tune?
Yes.
Right? If you don't know, like, that's just too bad. You should already know.
Right.
Or if you don't know, I'm not going to explain it to you.
Yeah.
So those are immediate, like, oh, okay.
Well, because I actually legitimately would want to know. I want to know. Like, if I don't know and you know, can you please help me and educate me?
But in a moment where somebody's displaying you being sure, or them being sure rather, and then you asking them a question, they may, in a short-term sense, consider that a challenge to their correctness. Therefore, their defense may not necessarily be data-driven. Their defense may be emotional and say, "Stop asking, shut up." And that's possible. And I don't think that's. I'm not going to hold that against anybody. But I am going to take it as a superficial cue to say, I'm going to go figure this out on my own to the best of my capacity. I may have to ask a bunch of people because I may not know where to find the information, and if I try to find the information, I can't. I'm like,
you might encounter similar people in your quest.
So I'm going to be careful with it. But yes, when somebody just basically tells you to screw off, tougher to believe them, more likely to want to check. So have you encountered people with a fair amount of knowledge in a specific domain, and you asked them a question about it, and they gave you multiple angles and said, there's no current agreement, but this seems to be the one that's most likely?
Yes.
Is that something that you've encountered with multiple people who you would be fairly confident in saying they know what they're talking about?
No. Like, it hasn't happened with multiple people.
Okay. Are you saying it's only happened with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You need to talk to more people in your stuff. Because I can't, this doesn't work if I'm the only example in your life. Like, I feel like you need to see other people. Not that we're seeing each other, but you know.
Yes.
Right.
I do know.
Yes. But what I've encountered, because I happen to have been in situations with people who should be subject matter experts, is that those who I would be fairly confident in calling true subject matter experts know that there's major holes in the knowledge on the subject. Then there's people who are like, no, I'm the only one doing this. You won't find anybody else in the world doing this. They say they know it, but I'm the only one. You won't find people doing what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm like, well, okay. Right, so I've experienced people who should be subject matter experts who are overly firm and unwavering, and then I've experienced people who are saying, well, there's multiple angles, these people say this, these people say this, the overlap seems to be this seems to be the most promising. I'm used to that.
Right.
I'm actually quite used to that.
Okay.
Such that if in a position of expertise I see somebody, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't seem to be the behavior that matches.
Right.
So I tend to find a little bit more firmness in people who are epistemologically more in one camp than any others. And for people who actually know about epistemology, if somebody knows about epistemology, they really know about theories of knowledge and theories of knowledge creation, and they won't accept that others exist. That doesn't work for me. Right? I would call myself epistemologically promiscuous. I'll mess with almost any epistemology.
Okay.
Some have burned me. I'm not going to go back to them because they're a special type of crazy because they don't believe in anything such as stable, observable reality. And that would be postmodernism and all of its friends, which are of the critical traditions. Right. So they have some value in that they're really good at criticizing, but they at no point will allow for any agreement on stable, observable reality.
So they've really never come to an agreement.
It's not possible, right? Because any agreement is a power grab. So I'm like, we had a thing.
Right.
You're crazy. Not coming back. Now, there are people who obviously would take offense to that, and I understand, right? But epistemologically speaking, the ones I have fun with, constructivism, positive, and post-positivism, you can find other names in there.
Right.
But the idea that there are multiple realities and that if we look at them, we will find an emergent, stable reality, observable. So it wears different clothes, it lives in different houses, but it's the same thing.
Right.
And then positivism, post-positivism, we're looking for one reality, and we kind of, along this line, we find variation.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I like that, because we can do something with that.
Right.
So but if I find a positivist who will not accept a constructivist, I'm going to be like, oh, you're crazy too.
Right.
Like, oh, we could have had fun.
Yeah, it's like, we're so close.
Yeah. You're smart, you're strong, good looking. You're fucking batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how I would take that. So to bring it back into the realm of, the philosophy of science, if you just won't acknowledge that other philosophies or other aspects or other takes on the concept of philosophy of science exist, I'm like, okay, so then your knowledge is definitely incomplete.
Right.
Because you won't even accept this other stuff.
Right.
So that's the way that I would say it, is if somebody is presenting and they're extremely firm, will not consider other aspects, just tell you that you don't know what they know, therefore you're wrong, we're not going to have fun. I, more often than not, will just say, okay.
I was going to say, you might have fun.
Well, yeah. If they push.
Right.
If they push. I'm like, oh, okay. We'll have this talk.
Right.
And I'm going to rip you apart. And funny enough, you're not going to know I did it, and I'm an asshole to you now.
Right.
And anybody else who knows the specific concepts that I'm bringing up and can understand them, they know that I just ripped you apart. And Dunning-Kruger curve.
Yeah.
You're too dumb to know you're dumb.
Yeah.
And you're convinced that you're smart because you know all of the methodologies contained within specific epistemology. Like, well, that's great. Fantastic. What about the other ones
Yeah.
that do exist? You like cell phones? do you like the internet? Postmodernism is incapable of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's critical theories of any kind, whichever one you want to. Incapable of the internet. Only capable of saying, the internet's killing your brain, while telling you on the internet.
I was going to say, yeah, while using it.
Yeah, so the central concept, to keep coming back to it, people who are unwavering and overly firm in their current position, I need to check. I need to check on it. And I may not have the domain-specific knowledge to know that you're wrong, but it's an initial superficial sign, like, whoo, right? So any news channel, no, the other side of this issue is stupid. Keep watching so you can buy stuff from my advertisements. Yeah, you can kick rocks.
Right.
The moment somebody's overly firm and convinced and heavily convicted of their current position, I'm going to have a hard time. If somebody's like, look, I know that these other things exist, but this is the one that really, really, really matters to me. I'm more convinced by this one. I'm like, well, thank you for acknowledging the existence of others.
Right.
And we might have a disagreement, but I appreciate that you're not stuck. Right?
So just recognizing that these other things exist, but still deciding on this.
Yeah, because you took your time. You tried to figure something out. You showed me that you have a broader knowledge net, right? You're not stuck on one.
Right.
Because if you only know one angle, right? What? For anybody to be convinced before they, let's say I describe you to somebody on whatever characteristic, right? 6 foot whatever your weight is. I'm like, oh, people who are that size, oh, they're all like this.
Right.
It's like, dude, you don't know my name. You never took me out to dinner. You don't know who beat me up when I was in 3rd grade. Nobody. But you don't know.
But you don't know.
Right? So how are you sure that I'm something?
Mm-hmm.
That's very inconsiderate and rude.
Yeah.
Right? So prejudging
Alright.
without considering other information. This is an issue for me. Right? And I'm epistemologically promiscuous. Right? I'll settle on one more than the others, but I'd like to talk to the others.
Right.
Right? Like, I might marry one. Or like stay in a long-term committed relationship. Depending on how you like to use analogy, like, me and this one, but
we're close.
Like, they do let me have discussions with the other ones. Right? Because they know that I'm coming home. However you want to put it.
Yeah.
So, does that seem to be something that you'd be willing to consider or buy into? Because it already seems like it's what you do. When somebody's really firm, you're just like, I need to go check this out.
Well, and it really does. I mean, a lot of the times when someone is pushing, I call it, before this, I call it selling. Someone was trying to sell me on something, and I would ask them for more information. Give me more information in your advertisement of why I should buy into this. And they would just say, well, it's cheaper than the other guys, or it's brighter or shinier. And I'm like, but no. What are the features of this that make it useful to me?
Yeah.
And they couldn't do that. They were only going on the outside superficial things. And I was just like, okay, I have to go check. I have to go look into the other products that are available.
Yeah. To kind of glom onto that, or maybe attach to that a little bit, I don't know if I said this on video with you at some point, but any sign of coercion, any sign that you're trying to convince me that you're right. So I'm trying to more so currently speak to what would make me check on something versus what would make me say, yeah, no. If you try to control my choice on any level, if I sniff coercion, I'm gone. That I don't know why that's me, but I know that it's me. If I walk into a store convinced that I'm going to buy something, I already know what I want to buy, and you're the salesperson, and you start to try to sell me the thing that I'm already going to buy, what do you think I'm going to do?
And just not get it?
Yeah, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the other store where nobody's going to talk to me. Like, I already made my choice. Stop. Just stop.
Yeah.
That can become a challenge, like a functional challenge, where it's like, no, all these people are trying to sell me on this thing. I just want to buy it. I want to give you my money.
Yeah.
Stop talking.
Yeah.
Because I'm so anti-coercion. I understand that coercion matters. There are times in which it has high functionality. I just don't want any part of it. It's against my personal religion. Whatever you want. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. It freaks me out. I get mad. I want to fight.
It's deep within you.
Yeah, I'm able to control it well because I just leave. Right. So in a situation where I've had many conversations like this, where somebody is trying to be very firm in that they are correct, I'm like, you really don't want to do that in front of me. And I've told you about some specific conversations. I said, you need to understand, this is legitimately my area of expertise.
Yeah.
You may think you have a lot of experience in this because you've done it for a long time. I'm like, but you've just, filled the role and never looked at the mechanisms of this thing.
Right.
So I think to be more specific, people would attempt to say very specific things about teaching.
Okay.
Very specific things about teaching in a health science setting. Okay. Right? So very specifically in an osteopathic setting, they're trying to tell me about teaching. Like, I know that you haven't looked at the research. Not only because you're not talking about it in a reasonable way, but because when I say, hey, here are the known pieces of information, there's varying ways to do it, but these are the known pieces of information, and then you tell me, yeah, whatever. I'm like, you don't want to do this with me. Yeah. Right? I've had some conversations like that, and some people have said, okay, point taken. Right? But other people have said, I know stuff.
It sounds
I've been teaching for, I've been teaching continuing education courses for 25 years. Right? And I'm like, yeah, so you walk in for a weekend, you tell some people stuff, you walk away, then when you ask them how did it go, because they paid you money, they say, well, okay. Right? Like, or you walk into a room as an instructor, you tell them something, and you walk away, and then you come back, and an hour later it looks like they're doing it well. Well, you didn't see whether or not they got on the internet, you didn't see whether or not they talked to each other. You're just convinced that what you did was the thing that worked.
You were gone for an hour.
You didn't pay attention to it. So, okay, yeah, sure. Like, that almost all educational interventions in self-sorted groups show almost no effect. It doesn't mean that none of them show no effect. It means that the majority of them show small effect or very little effect, such that the time and effort that it would take to enact them would not be worth it. Students are going to learn. Right? And one of the reasons they're going to learn is because they want out.
Yes.
So they're going to do whatever they can as an individual. They're going to come up with adaptive strategies for themselves, and they're going to get out. So I'm like, you can't control what the learner brings to it, so the teacher can do a lot of different things, but there's just simplistic concepts where, okay, as the instructor, as a person with greater amounts of knowledge, or domain-specific knowledge, you can detect errors that the learner can't detect, you can help them, you can provide them solutions, but they're going to do most of the work.
Yeah.
It's not about you. I want it to be about me, but it's not going to be.
Fact versus feeling.
Yeah. Well, so when somebody's very firm about something I do know about, I'm like, you're firm, and I know there's disagreement. All right, I'm just gonna say you might want to stop. If you're like, I don't want to stop, okay, sure, yeah, let's go. Yeah, right. I'm like pummeling you calmly. How does this feel? Well, you're stupid, Sam. Like, are you sure I'm continuing to punch you in the face and you're calling me stupid? Are you sure this is what you want to do? And that has happened quite a bit in my life. So.
Not literally though, right?
Punching people in the face?
While they're calling you stupid.
No.
Okay.
No. It's metaphorical.
Okay.
This is an intellectual thing in
Just making
conversation. Yeah, no, I haven't. No. Violence goes very wrong.
I just want to be clear for that.
Yeah. The same thing that I would say about a pissing contest. In a pissing contest, both people get urinated on.
Yes.
In a fight, the second you start a fight, everybody gets hurt.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to win, and the winner might get hurt more than the loser, but somebody's going to win.
Right.
Anyways, anything else to add?
No.
Okay, don't be too firm. Or else I'm going to check on your knowledge, and I'm probably going to find out that you are far too firm for your own good.
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of?
Oh, I thought you were literally telling me not to be firm with the no.
No.
I'm like, okay, not that I know.
No, that's not how that was supposed to go.
I'm stuff not up.
That's for anybody.
Okay.
That's...
Don't be too firm.
Yeah, don't be too firm.
That's the message.
Yeah, because there's disagreement in the thing that you think you know about, and you don't even know about the disagreement, which is how I know that you don't know.
Okay.